Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Owen, the head of Hubspot for startups. Hello.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, huge shout out to Cyprian. He introduced me to you. He uses HubSpot for startups for his company. He grew it a lot, and he told me you need to meet this guy. He's so active on social media. He has a lot to share. So yeah, shout out to him. For anybody that doesn't already know, please tell us what is HubSpot.
Yeah, so HubSpot is the number one CRM for scaling businesses globally. So we specialize in really anything around go-to-market strategy. So CRM, sales automation, customer success, and really around the kind of the world of CMS and operations. So anything that really a customer touches is what HubSpot's backend system helps companies do.
And what is HubSpot for startups?
So HubSpot for startups is sort of an arm of HubSpot, which is specializes in helping scaling companies. So really those companies that are pre-seed, seed, Series A style companies, the ones that are looking to grow but mightn't necessarily have the money to
Mm.
excel or to buy an enterprise solution like a HubSpot. So we try and make that a little bit easier by giving them discounts or extra perks or education sessions or pretty much everything in between.
And what are the main features of HubSpot for startups?
Yeah, so kind of the main things is really around education. Understanding not knowing what you don't know is sometimes one of the hardest things in business. And I'm a founder as well as being working in HubSpot directly. So I think one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is being able to educate startups on what is it that they need, what is really important to grow, and then help them facilitate that by kind of giving them pricing that kind of makes sense for them as well at the same time. So they're kind of the two main pillars of what we do: education and the right tools at the right time.
What do founders need to know before joining HubSpot for startups?
Yeah, I think it's really a case of, you know, understanding where you are in your go-to-market strategy is really important. So like for anyone that's maybe watching this or listening to this that is are at idea stage, one of the core things that I always recommend to people is start using a CRM. Don't just use Excel to manage your database. Like you're shooting yourself in the foot in the long-term growth of the business by not investing in even if it's some free system that'll help you get there faster. And it's still kind of the biggest problem that I see today from a lot of startups.
And how can people qualify for it?
Yeah, so you qualify through accelerators. So if you're part
Mm.
of an accelerator or an incubator, that's the way that most companies will go through. There's also companies out there like Vespi that I'd say a lot of people that are listening will be quite aware of. That we have partnerships with pretty much all the big VCs, accelerators, incubators in the region, as well as like educational organizations or matchmaking services like Vespi.
So if you're not part of one of your partners, you cannot join.
Essentially, yeah. So you would be able to still use kind of our free systems, but to
Yeah.
get the additional perks that are related to startup, yeah, you would need to be part of some accelerator, incubator, or VC. But saying that, there's a lot of value that's there within kind of free tools. If I'm being completely blunt, like a lot of the time, it's you know you don't always have to have the shiniest object. Sometimes it's the most simple things that are really related on how to grow and scale a business that's most important. So fundamentally understanding your customers, being able to track email open rates and click rates, like really being able to build a better database of your prospective customers, like that sort of stuff is all free to do. So like I would always recommend to people, like there's lots of systems out there. HubSpot is one of them. Like use something to get you to understand your customers better. It's the foolproof way of accelerating growth in a business.
And is there any pricing to it?
Pricing, no, free. Yeah, so there's completely free.
And it's a number of credits, or how does it work?
No, it's just free. We've free for everyone. So really, it's like basic CRM functionality is free. So database management, emails, open rates, click rates, all that sort of stuff, as well as like being able to manage your sales pipeline. That sort of stuff is completely free. And then when you want to take it to the next step, whether it's you qualify through the HubSpot for Startups program or whether you go through HubSpot, the kind of the normal route, there's kind of something that's there for everyone. We try and make the price makes sense for pretty much any small to medium sized business as you scale into becoming an enterprise customer, and then we kind of grow with you over time.
But is there any any way a founder can say no to this? So it's absolutely free with no.
Yeah, it's free and it's free forever, and like I think
that's the thing. Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, and if you look at to anyone that's kind of interested to learn more about kind of our background, our two founders, Dharmesh and Brian, are like their mission is to basically help millions of companies grow. And I think that's such a cool mentality to have, because if you look at what I've been in HubSpot for 5 or 6 years now, and one of the first ever all hands I was at with Brian Halligan at the time, who was the CEO and one of the founders. He basically said, I want to build a company that my grandkids are proud of. And I thought that was a really interesting mentality, because if you can help people even as they're scaling and growing a business with something that's completely for free, or you're helping the biggest company in the world, the satisfaction that you get from that is the same. You're helping people. Yes. And I think that's the most important thing. So that's one of the things I actually love about the free model as well, because I think it makes sense for everyone, not just the big people or big companies.
That's awesome. And can you share with us some success stories? So companies that used HubSpot for startups and some examples.
Yeah. So we've had some really cool pieces around kind of the fintech world. So there's a Dutch-based company which are called Molly. So they're in the fintech world, and they would have came out with the HubSpot program, and they've seen some really high scale, particularly around kind of sales over their period of time. So they do like payment services, which was really cool. And there's a couple of really other ones. So there's I'm from Ireland, so there's a company called Wayfair that have come through the HubSpot for Startups program as well, and they've seen some massive growth. So if anyone's interested in actually just reading through them, you can actually just go on to hubspot.com/case studies. So some really cool data. We're big into our data, so you can actually drill into companies that are in your industry that could be quite interesting as well to anyone that's listening.
So we already talked about the vision of helping as many companies as you can. But what are your future plans for HubSpot for startups?
Yeah, so for the HubSpot for startups, what we're really trying to do is really help to help anyone that kind of comes through or has gone through a funding level, and help them get to their bigger North Star goals as quickly as possible. And as I maybe alluded to at the start of this session, was one of those big ones is not to just focus on the product. Sometimes you have to think a little bit more around the customer. So helping companies really realize that the customer is the most important thing for us and for my team. That's the most important thing, and that comes in a number of different facets. It's getting access to those companies earlier. It's helping them with more education and training, and that will, what we hope will help everyone in the long run, not just HubSpot but also those individual startups as well.
Yeah. When did you join HubSpot?
So I joined back in 2017, and
how was the journey?
Yeah, the journey was interesting. I actually started in a sales role, so I worked on the ground in a number of different regions. I predominantly managed emerging markets because it's what I'm really passionate about. So I've had an interesting route the whole way up to doing a level of consultancy with HubSpot, and then kind of moving into the current role that I'm in now, which is really helping to grow regions and helping them to kind of increase penetration in those regions, which for me is a very, very rewarding job overall. But yeah, I came up the hard way. Working in sales is probably the best way that you understand and learn a product, and understand and learn an industry and how to deal with multitudes of different people. It was yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And right now you're helping the Central and Eastern Europe and the Middle East, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I help Central Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa as well. So I essentially manage all emerging markets within HubSpot, which is very, very fun. Um,
But
there's some
what do
really
you actually
cool
do?
companies coming out of there.
Yeah, yeah. What do you actually do in your day-to-day routine? Or yeah.
Yeah, day to day is a lot of speaking events, to be honest. So a lot of education sessions, a lot of
Mm.
speaking events, and then kind of internally in HubSpot, obviously dealing with multitudes of different teams. That's kind of, part and parcel of what you have to do. But core of my job is dealing with and working with really closely with the VCs, accelerators, and incubators, and trying to help them with whatever education sessions that we can give, or different resources that will kind of make the biggest impact in the region, but also within their own kind of portfolios.
So, how did you start your career, even before HubSpot?
Yeah, so I have had an interesting career. I've done a lot. I set up my first company when I was 17. I sold it when I was 22. So I'm a par qualified accountant, and I hated being an accountant. So I sold my business. I finished my accountancy degree, and I traveled for a while. Obviously, selling a company very early was an interesting. It was a lot of money for a very young man, so I invested it thankfully a little bit wisely, and then I came back and started working in tech sales. So I worked for a company called Qualtrics for a couple of years. Then I moved to HubSpot, and then I also worked in Australia for a little while as well. So I've always been around tech since I was probably around 25, 26. But I always have had businesses. So it's probably the part of why I love my job so much in terms of working in startups or with startups is I'm currently the managing director and founder of two businesses. So I love business. It's why I essentially get up in the morning. And I think having that experience of working in a large corp as well as, running your own businesses does kind of, is the best way for me personally to learn.
So you work in both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. Very
Lot,
interesting.
lot of, lot of sleepless nights and more probably gray hair than I'd admit, but yeah, it's fun.
It's our passion.
It's a hobby,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
What's your best piece of advice for founders?
Yeah. Remember that I say this all the time, and anyone that's ever been to any of my workshops and they're listening to this will probably laugh at me. But I say it in every session that I do. It's remember that nobody cares about your product and your service. What they care about is what does it do to save them time or make them money. That's it. Business is very simple when you remember that nobody cares about you or your product, that they care about what it does for them. And a lot of people forget about that, and I do get pushback from people, especially in B2B companies. They're like, oh, and that's not true. And I'm like, think about the last product or service you bought for your business. You acted in your own best interest. And sometimes, yes, it was in the interest of the company, but it was always around what did that do to make the company more money or save the company money. And that's what if we focus on the customer mentality first,
Yeah.
your likelihood for success is an awful lot higher.
So this is the very basic, but people tend to forget about it.
Everyone forgets about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They get too excited about the shiny new
Features,
thing.
yeah.
And forget about the fundamental of what they're trying to achieve. And I think once everyone in a business has the same ethos as you and sort of sees and understands, look, this is what we're trying to do. and I use a lot of sports analogies, but everyone's rowing in the same direction. If you're rowing in the same direction, life becomes a lot easier. And I think in business, people sometimes forget that, that if you remember what the customer care about, then, and everyone's thinking with that same mentality, again, the likelihood for success is an awful lot higher.
Yeah, and you're also a mentor at some events, right? Some
Yes.
programs. Can
Yeah.
you share some more on that? Your experience
Yeah.
with that?
So my experience in a mentor perspective is I usually try and pick out a couple of startups that I find really interesting, that I think have a really cool niche with, and then I try and share my guidance or experience in either that region or that company type or industry type, or around particularly around go-to-market strategy, because that's where I'm best placed to help with. So yeah, I try and pick maybe about 4 to 6 companies, depending on over a year, that I really get deep with, and then I would run quite a lot of mentoring sessions as one-offs, with, I suppose, a bigger cohort of companies over time. But yeah, it's really around go-to-market strategy. That's where I will have the biggest impact. So, to anyone that's maybe listening, it's like, what is go-to-market strategy? Really is around anything a customer touches. So marketing, sales, customer service predominantly.
Yeah. So how do you divide your time between all these activities that you do? It's clear that you're passionate, and I'm sure you find time. But
Yeah.
I don't know, do you have any productivity advice? You seem like
be
you do a lot.
really proactive with your calendar. I think the only way, I joke with my fiance all the time that, like, if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, that's the sad truth. I actually, probably, if anyone's looking, you can probably see my bike is right behind me as well. I'm a very avid triathlete. So, for instance, I factor in my running or cycling time or swimming time into my overall workday. So I do have my calendar very, very rigidly set up. But I also don't waste time during the day. So, for instance, I work from home. So my commute is then taken up by my business. So I'm not actually adding anything to my day.
Yes.
I'm just being really good with my calendar. So what I would say to anyone is, like, it takes a lot of dedication at the start, but once you get into the routine of it, like running your life like you'd run a business is the way I think about it, and I use my calendar to do that.
Absolutely fantastic piece of advice.
Yeah.
I started using a calendar more seriously with the time boxing technique and all that 3 months ago, and it completely changed my life. Now I cannot live without it. So I plan everything, and yeah.
And
That's awesome.
even little things like people
Yes.
booking time in your calendar. So, like, you can give people individual time slots where they can come and do, rather than
Letting them
for me,
disturb the focus
yeah.
time. Yeah.
The focus time, like, can you speak at 2 o'clock on Tuesday? Like, for me, that's an unnecessary communication. Whereas you can spend that time actually speaking to that person. And I think that's, the value of, being really rigid with a calendar, is that, like, you're actually spending more focused time with that person when you actually do speak to them.
Yeah. Thank you for taking your time to do this. I have
Yeah,
one
I
last
love it.
question. What's your favorite software apart from HubSpot, if you can share with us?
Vidyard.
I have
Vid-
heard about it.
Yeah,
What
so
does it do?
Vidyard is a video.
Vidyard. Okay.
It's
Yeah, I
a
know it.
video recording system. I actually couldn't live without it at this point in my life. Yeah, I use it for everything. I use it for explanations. I use it for prospecting. There's just a million different ways that I use it, and
Instead of doing calls, or right?
yeah, instead of doing calls, it's a really easy way for you to be personal with someone, but without taking too much of their time.
I'll definitely check it out. We seem like we share some
Yeah.
some things. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, is there anything else that you want to tell us?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and look, I really appreciate you inviting me on. I'm extremely privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.